This is a $4,000 gaming laptop, and my number one question is why? So when Lenovo Legion reached out to sponsor this video, they came to me with a very unique proposition. I could do and say whatever I want, which I guess thank you to the Legion team for trusting me with your shiny prototype laptop. But it really got me thinking. A $4,000 laptop is an outrageous sum of money. But clearly, they're making this for a reason. People are buying these laptops. Obviously not a ton of people, but this is a real market that's out there. And it really gets me thinking, like, surely no one's spending $4,000 on a gaming laptop, right? Are you using this for video editing or rendering, or I'm super curious. But I will say one thing. This thing, for $4,000 as it should be, is loaded with tech. I mean, you name a spec, this thing pretty much has it. Core i9, 64 gigs of RAM, RTX 4090, 165 Hz 3.2K mini LED display that gets eye-searingly bright. Watch yourself. I'm gonna go crank to full brightness. My eyes! Now this particular version of the Legion 9i that I have here actually cost $4,400. One of the most striking parts of this is certainly the forged carbon fiber. So this is real carbon. Now what they've done is actually something kind of interesting. I was able to speak with the Lenovo engineers about it, and they actually had to develop an entirely new manufacturing process to make this happen. So if you look at it, every single one of these chassis are completely unique. These little carbon chips are hand laid by someone, and it's a multiple step process where it has to go through like different factories. Like, there's a lot involved in actually making this the way it is. And on top of that, the material of the laptop is also unique. The choice of forged carbon is really interesting. So unlike aluminum, which is on pretty much all gaming laptops from the last decade, forged carbon not only is stronger and lighter, but importantly, it also has some environmental impacts. So it is a lot of work to do the R&D to make forged carbon really a thing. But theoretically, carbon is incredibly common. You could capture this from the emissions of a smokestack or something, turn it into these pellets, and then create yourself a super badass laptop out of it. Now right now they're using it only on this Halo product, and it's on the deck lid. But you can imagine that while they're using this Halo product to sort of fund all of the R&D and build the manufacturing lines and everything to work with this material, in the future, maybe it trickles down to more of the other laptops in their line. And maybe they're able to use it for the actual structure of the device or whatever. Like, this is the kind of stuff where I think a Halo product makes a lot of sense to sort of trial out a new product, a new feature. It's something that's not quite ready for the prime time, but for those of you who have $4,000 burning a hole in your pocket, you can kind of have a glimpse at the cutting edge, the next generation of not only materials, but also performance. If you are a big fan of customization, boy oh boy have the Legion team loaded you up with, I would say, an overkill amount of RGB. All right, let's count it together. So we've got ourselves a full RGB keyboard, of course we do, and it also does come with additional keycaps if you want to swap them out. There's also an RGB strip around the front and the sides of the device. Come around back, there is another RGB strip, and there's RGB on the Legion logo. Now mind you, if you want a little bit more of a low-key look, you can set these to white or turn them off or whatever, but I find it to be almost excessive levels of RGB. But then again, if you're the kind of person who's spending $4,000 on a laptop, a little flashy is probably not a bad idea. Port-wise, we've got USB-A, headphone jack, Ethernet, HDMI, Thunderbolt. I mean, you name it, it's pretty much got it. But one of the coolest things about this laptop is actually what's on the inside. Liquid cooling, to be specific. This is a prototype laptop, so the software and certainly the hardware is not quite final. But I like the fact that you've got so much cooling. So you see that the top is pretty much all this grate. So you actually can see all the way through. So the top is meant to intake air and run it through these fans and exhaust it out. The bottom is specifically out the back, which I think is a neat way of sort of taking advantage of this, because when you're stuffing this level of components in a laptop, which is relatively thin and light, honestly, keeping it cool is absolutely the name of the game. And if you don't want to make it chungussy thick, which is probably not a term that the Lenovo engineers use, but I use, then you gotta get a little bit creative. There's actually two power adapters that come in the box. So there's your big 330 watt adapter, which is what you're going to want to use for gaming, but it also comes with a 140 watt USB-C charger. And that would still keep this laptop up and running for, Google Docs, you're watching YouTube, or it's a little slightly more like basic tasks when you're not really having to push it to the max. There we go. All right. Woo! That's magnesium, or well, I assume it's magnesium. Wow! Dude, that is absurdly light. So this is the thing, when you've got a laptop like this that is loaded up with this level of specs, they did a lot of work to actually make it as lightweight as possible because there's certain places where you just can't save the weight. So take the battery, for example. This is a 99.99 watt-hour battery, aka the largest legal battery you could take on an airplane. Gaming laptops just generally don't have any larger batteries. Now, behind that, you'll see a whole lot of cooling, as in 3 fans, which is also quite impressive. Oh man, you know what? I mean, they did say I could do whatever I want, so I'm just gonna There we go. I don't know what this is for, probably not important. All right, I want to see the water cooling and how easy it is to actually upgrade the RAM. I didn't want to do this, but I'm doing it for your viewing pleasure and potentially an opportunity for you to laugh at me when I break a $4,000 laptop. So here's the thing, this doesn't look super complicated. Like, I'm pretty sure I can do this. I think if I take the battery out, I'm actually gonna have a lot easier access to things. There we go. Look at that, 99.99 watt hours. Oh my, look how much more is behind there. Dude, look at the little CMOS batteries underneath the SSD. That's actually kind of cool. Boy, this is the most advanced laptop disassembly I've ever done. What I might do now is I might unscrew the obvious screws for the motherboard. Try to get it a little loose and then see where things are being held. Oh no, 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 no. That one I just took out, or this one? This makes me nervous. Look how many screws I've got out, and I'm definitely not remotely close to this thing. So what I'm assuming is I need to lift this part of the board up and then pull it toward me. Yeah, it's coming, it's coming. It actually is free, I think. Okay, now, with any luck, oh, look at that. Instantly successful, my friends. We're free now. I just need to unhook anything that's on the bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna gently remove this little dude. Behold, my friends, the inside of a $4,400 gaming laptop. And oh my goodness, there's a lot here. I'm gonna gently set this down. Woo! All right, so first things first, you should not do what I just did. Technically, it is possible, and if you feel very confident and very bold, you can do it. And if you look here, the reward is that you can easily upgrade your RAM. Well, quote unquote easy at this point. So we do have our SODIMMs, so these are each 32 gig DIMMs of memory. So the RAM is upgradable. Now, because this ships with 64 gigs, you're probably not going to want to do that. But I will give Legion props. It is at least replaceable RAM, just maybe not quite as easy as I would like. Now, the other thing that really stands out is this. So this is the water cooling for the GPU. So the way it works, as far as I can tell, I believe our CPU is going to be under this side. So you can see how thick that heat pipe is. And there's a number of heat pipes that basically go all the way around, top, bottom, for VRM, for GPU, for CPU. Now, the way that the water cooling works is interesting. So there's a little pump in here, and the liquid cooling actually doesn't work all the time. So it only kicks on once the GPU hits 84 degrees Celsius. At that point, you want to make sure that you're hitting the maximum boost frequencies, yada, yada, yada. So that little liquid cooler will kick on. So you can see it's very, very small. So it starts it out here, it runs it down, it runs it specifically across the GPU VRM, right? So the actual power delivery to your graphics, and that gives you about an additional 10 watts of TDP on that actual GPU. It might not sound like a lot, but when it comes to a laptop like this, pushing every 5 and 10 watts can be a very big differentiator between going from a chassis which is 19 mils thick to 25 to 30. Like, it's a big deal. And this is the first time that I'm aware of that there's been a fully contained liquid cooling pump inside of a laptop. Now you'll see if you get low that the Z height, right, so the actual thickness of the liquid cooling pump is way above everything else, right? So everything else is quite thin, and this absolutely sticks out a huge amount. And because of that, if you look on the other side here, on the, I guess this is the deck lid. So we're looking at the keyboard from the bottom. You see that there's a huge cutout here behind where the actual screen goes. And that is specifically just designed to actually clear that liquid cooling. They've definitely heavily committed to the idea of fitting the liquid cooling in this laptop, because that is not an insignificant amount of size and space. Now, I do know that the Legion team partnered with Cooler Master to develop this solution. So I'd be very curious to see if they can continue to develop it, because it's very cool that it runs for your GPU VRM. It's hard to argue that this is not one of the more advanced laptops that I've ever taken a look at. Certainly one of the more involved when it comes to disassembly. I want to emphasize that while this is sponsored by Legion, I have full freedom to say whatever I want in this video. And what I will say is if you're looking for a gaming laptop, this is probably not your best price to performance option. You're paying a lot of money for admittedly very good performance, and it is going to be a little bit better than, say, some of the other Legion devices that do also have a 4090. But what you're looking at here is something which I think is a laptop that is designed for both gaming and for work. Working with 8K video, doing color, which this does have a relatively color accurate, very bright display. Think about things like game development, maybe 3D rendering, working with AI. The idea that this is a laptop with all the performance you could ever ask for gaming, as well as all the capability to get work done, could be really appealing to someone who has plenty of money and can justify it based on the fact that it can get real work done. Thank you very much to the Legion team for, of course, sponsoring this video, but more importantly, trusting me to really kind of approach this Legion 9i however I want it. It's not a product I normally look at. $4,000 is an incredible amount of money for a laptop. But when you put it in the context of it being a Halo product and, meant for fun, but also for work, it is incredibly cool.